Welcome everybody to Forza Horizon 4, and today we're taking a look at the 1993 Porsche 928 GTS. Now this Grand Tourer was produced between 1977 and 1995. Around 61,000 of them were made, but only 407 of these were this US only version. It was intended to be a replacement for the 911, as it combined the power, poise and handling of a sports car with the refinement, comfort and equipment of a luxury saloon, which Porsche executives thought that combination would have wider appeal than the 911, though obviously that was not the case because of how few it actually sold. But the 928 has the distinction of being the company's first production V8 powered model, and it's only coupe powered by a front mounted V8 engine. This GTS was available for sale in late 1991 as a 1992 model in Europe, and in spring of 1992 as an early 1993 model in North America, which is what this is. It's got wider wheel arches, larger front brakes and a new, more powerful engine over the previous iterations of this vehicle. And yeah, I do adore the look of this car. I think it's a car that is out of time in terms of how it looks, because it doesn't look like a 70s vehicle, it doesn't look like an 80s vehicle, and certainly doesn't look like a 1990s vehicle either. It looks ahead of its time in terms of the way it looks, and yeah, it showed that back then Porsche really did go for a radical new design when they came up with a new car. If they were to make this nowadays, it would look just like a 911, but without the engine in the rear. But back then they really did go for something all new, and yeah, not just all new in terms of looks, but also in terms of platform, as their previous vehicles were based on other cars. You know, like the 356 was based on a Beetle, but this was based on nothing. It was an entirely new platform, which is again really rather nice to see. And yeah, it's got everything you could ever ask for in an early 90s vehicle. But yeah, the price of this is what ultimately sunk this car from being as successful as it could have been, because this version of the car was selling for around $100,000, which is why so few of these were actually sold in the US. And yeah, for $100,000 you could, get a Ferrari, you could get a Jaguar XJ220 probably, which isn't exactly a car that has as few power as this, while it has far more in the way of speed and acceleration. But this certainly does manage to combine all of the elements that I talked about earlier, as yeah, it's got a huge amount of space for its rear compartment, and it's a hatchback as well, so you can get plenty of stuff in there. Don't think the rear seats are all that large, to be honest. They look really rather quite uncomfortable, to be fair, so unless you're a child I doubt you'd have a good time in the back of there. But yeah, this car originally started out with a 4.5 litre V8 producing 237 horsepower and 268 pounds-feet of torque. But this early 90s version, which only was a few years before the car itself ended production, came with a 5.4 litre V8 engine producing 345 horsepower and 369 pounds-feet of torque. So yeah, it's practically 100 horsepower and 100 pounds-feet of torque more than what was being put out of this car in the late 70s. So yeah, big improvement in power over that original version. It's also got 50-50 weight distribution, so despite the fact it weighs 3,594 pounds, it's well balanced, and yeah, it doesn't really feel like a car that is rear wheel drive or front engined. It feels, yeah, really rather precise and well poised. So yeah, twin exhausts, rear spoiler as well helped set this apart from other versions that came out. And yeah, as you can see, it's got huge wide tyres as well to help deal with all that power and torque. It's also got pop-up headlights, but not the kind that are normal. They're not away behind a flap or anything before they come up or down. They're just out, and they flop up and down themselves. So yeah, I really do love this car. It's not the first time this car has been featured on a Forza game. It was on Forza Motorsport 7. For whatever reason I didn't review it on that game, but nonetheless, let's get onto the open road and see what this car can do. So yeah, this is probably my favourite mass-produced Porsche, in all honesty, because I do love a V8, and yeah, I think this looks unique enough in Porsche's lineup to make it really stand out, even though obviously it's far from their most iconic vehicle, and yeah, it's also far from their fastest, either in terms of having a V8 or generally a Porsche sports car. But yeah, I do really like it, and yeah, it's fun to drive, sounds great, looks superb, and yeah, like I said, it's just a bit more unique from Porsche. Front engine, rear wheel drive. It's got a hatchback. It's you know, spacious inside. It's very luxurious. It basically feels like a combination between the 959 in terms of technology and more unique styling and just general, you know, luxury and V8 performance mixed in. So yeah, highly enjoyable car to drive. I'll let you listen to the engine for a little bit first, and then we'll talk about it some more. So yeah, despite that price tag overwhelming its ability to be sold at a high rate, and yeah, it's far from the most powerful car of its period, it's still a really capable car in terms of acceleration and top speed. It can do 0 to 60 in 5.3 seconds, 0 to 113.1 seconds, and go to a top speed of 176 miles an hour, which is still fairly rapid by today's standards, to be honest. And yeah, it really does make me wish that Porsche would come out with another car like this, because they don't have another front engine rear wheel drive coupe at the moment. And yeah, I really think they'd nail it in terms of, you know, the V8 power, because as much as I hate the Panamera and the Cayenne in a lot of ways, the engine that they have in those cars really does sing and has a lot of power, and it's really good in terms of acceleration and top speed. It would go down a number in a car like this, especially if they focused on it being a bit more lightweight, and yeah, but also keeping some of the luxury in there as well. So yeah, it's a big shame that Porsche aren't doing anything like this anymore, but I'm glad that they at least did this originally, even if it was nowhere near the success that they were hoping it would be, because obviously they wanted to replace the 911 and it just never did, not in terms of numbers nor in terms of how iconic it was in comparison to the 911. It really did become the unloved brother of the 911 in a lot of ways. But again, I'm glad that they did it, and yeah, and we get to enjoy it nowadays on this game. And yeah, it handles beautifully as well because of that 50-50 weight distribution. The brakes are really rather solid. It does stop in no time at all, despite, you know, being an early 90s car. And yeah, they also did transfer some of the technology from the 959, I think, in terms of the rear diff, which is, yeah, why this car is able to not just handle its power really well, but also loves to slide about when the occasion takes you. So yeah, really good car. You can get it by doing 50% of the current festival playlist, which isn't too difficult, especially when, you know, you're getting a great car like this as a reward. So yeah, highly recommend getting it. It's fun to see it out in an open world game. Obviously, like I said, it is on Forza Motorsport 7, so if you want to try it out on that game first, if you've got that game as well, then by all means do so, as it does also really work on the track, but it also really works here as well. Nonetheless, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.